My name is Austin. I've been coming to ISI for about 2 or 3 months now, and in the short time that I've been here, I've done maybe 2 public speaking events in that short time. One was last weekend for the first time with the junior high students that I coach. I was able to do the communion med over there, and now here. So take it easy with me, guys. But as you guys know, my name's Austin. I've been in Arizona for a little bit over 7 years now. I'm originally from Chicagoland area. Can't say I'm from Chicago because I'm not. So being from that area, it taught me a lot about who I am and just learning a lot about different cultures, family, friends, and relationships. I was very lucky to be able to have a good group of solid friends growing up from when I was a wee little lad all the way up till now. So I'm still connected with those guys from first grade. And that was probably one of the hardest things about moving here. And so in the process of moving here, I had to get rid of what I thought were all those relationships and friendships and stuff like that. And just, it was a clean start. But it wasn't a clean start. And so what I realized, there was a lot of trauma from my past and a lot of just different things that had happened in the short 23 years of my existence. So just to give an overview, it all started when I was in about 6th grade, or 5th, 6th grade. That's when my parents got divorced, my family fell apart, my aunt had a brain aneurysm, my uncle got hit in the face with a softball, broke every bone in his face, can't see out of his one eye, my grandpa died of bone cancer, and of course, my parents got divorced. Following that, my house ended up getting raided by the police department because of the things that my dad was doing on the side as a police officer, because he was a cop as well, but the saying is dirty cop. And so following that, I grew up pretty quickly. I had a harsh reality, and a harsh thing hit me really quick of my parents separating. But luckily, the good thing was my grandma, which is my mom's mom, lived 4 doors down from us. And so the custody thing wasn't really an issue until my dad stopped taking care of himself, taking care of the house, taking care of just everything, and it fell into foreclosure. And that's when mine and his relationship started getting rocky, was because I would have to go for the custody battles to his place, which was on the south side of Chicago. Mind you, I was living in the suburb with my mom. And so going all the way out there and stuff like that, just hearing and staying pretty much in his basement the whole time, because he wanted just to spend as much time with us but keep us controlled. He didn't want us going out, seeing different things, seeing different people. He wanted to spend as much time with us, which led to him being controlling, obsessive, and just manipulative of me, my little brother, and just everything else that came along. So when about 8th grade came around, me and my brother, it was his weekend to get us, and we decided my brother was having some problems with his mouth. And so this was a long period of time, and just not knowing what that was. He was going to the doctors. They couldn't figure out what it was. They thought it was maybe just like a cavity or something like that. But it ended up being an abscess tooth. But it was so bad that one night he woke up and his whole face was swollen. His airway was closing up. And what did my dad not want to do? Bring him back to my mom's house to allow us to take him to either the hospital or the doctor or anything like that. And so that's when mine and his relationship really turned, and I just stopped wanting to see him. And so growing up without that dad figure, or a really good dad figure, really sets a figure for all relationships and how I see God. And at that time, I didn't want to look to God. My aunts and uncle were involved in their church, and I didn't want to go. My mom tried to get me to go, and I still didn't want to go. And so all my relationships were without males because I didn't trust them because of my dad. And so even now I'm still working on those trust issues with, say, male figures, because of just the lying, manipulative stuff that my dad would do and try to get us to stay at his house. But fast forward a couple years, and we all know what happens to a kid in Chicago, rowdy, growing up without, say, one parent. My mom just was working in the hotel industry as a hotel supervisor, but her schedule required her to work nights. And so my grandma would watch us during the weekdays and stuff like that. And so what she would do, she would go to bed strictly at 9 o'clock. And what I would do after 9 o'clock was go out and have fun. and just enjoy what freedom I felt like I had. But it wasn't really free because I would be back by 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and still go to high school at 6:30 in the morning. And so the party life and just everything else that I was doing wasn't lining up to a life that I knew deep down inside I needed to have. And so my mom decided to pack us all up and move us out to Arizona. But the thing was, she moved about 6 months before we did. And the day before we moved here, she found out everything I was doing, from sneaking out to all the drugs and everything else that I was doing. And she found it all out. And so me and her actually had this conversation the other day of how much trust she had to put in the Lord and how much trust she had to put in God, not knowing what I was going to do in the 4 months from not being with her or seeing her. And so I didn't get into any trouble at that point because I was too busy helping my grandma pack up the house, my mom pack up everything that was here and stuff like that. Well, we moved here. My mom got established at a couple different churches that she didn't really like, but then she found CCV. And so we started going to church every so often, and me still being reluctant on it. I was like, you know what? I still don't want to go. I don't want to do this. And when I moved here, I was a junior in high school. And so it was a big transition for me, leaving all my friends, family, stuff like that behind, not knowing what the kids were like here and not trusting anybody. And moving here was the best thing that happened to me because that's when I started growing my relationship with God. And it was actually about 4 years ago today that we ended up getting baptized as a family, and just feeling, as soon as you went under the water, I just felt just a renewance in me and just feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time. And so after we got baptized, my life was still not perfect. I still was getting to some of the same trouble, going out on the weekends, hanging out with friends that weren't the best for me, and just not living the life that God wanted me to. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago that my dad actually ended up dying. So I get a phone call one morning that my dad ended up dying. And it was a summer, and I didn't know what to do. I had friends and family in town from Chicago, and I had to play the tough guy. And that was the start of many deaths in my life. I've lost one of my best friends that I had since I was, for probably about 8 years. I lost my uncle, my grandma. But going through those deaths and those trials and stuff like that weren't anything compared to what we're seeing this weekend with Jesus and the crucifixion, and just trusting in the Lord and knowing that his plan is greater and that the suffering that I go through is for him and is just so much greater than anything I can do. And I'm not perfect. I'm still making mistakes, and I've gone through a couple different things. One of the biggest things I went through was last year. I ended up being in the hospital for 5 days with pneumonia and a bruised lung, and not knowing what that outcome was. I spent one of the mornings, I had a crash team in the hospital room because of just how severe my pneumonia was. I woke up, couldn't breathe, and so they called the crash team in my room, transported me to ICU, and that was the biggest moment of my life where I knew I had to put my full faith in God and trust in him and trust in his process, and just know that whatever the outcome was, that it was all in his hands. And so this is just a snippet of some of the stuff that I've gone through in my testimony, but the one thing that I wanted to make clear was I didn't follow anything of what I had on my paper here. But I just want everybody to give thanks to God. And I'm reading a book called Winning the War in Your Mind by Craig Rochelle. And it talks about giving thanks for the things that God didn't do that you wanted him to do. And out of all the things that I've gone through, I am so blessed to have experienced those things, because those are the trials and sufferings that have allowed me to clinch onto him and show him that, and just grab onto him and trust him with my whole life, because that's all I have. That's all who we have. And if we don't fully commit and give everything up for him, I don't know where I would be. I don't know what path I would be on. I don't know what direction of life I would be going. And by the grace of God, now that I found better relationships, I have you guys. Are you kidding me? I have my family, my friends. I have a beautiful fiance that I'm getting married to in November. And so if it wasn't for him, the relationships that I've had in the past with previous girls, I wouldn't know what a true relationship focused on Christ was like. And just keeping him in the center of not only with her, but with my family, with my friends. And so I just want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come up here and share a little bit about myself, and I'll pass it back over.